When I tell you to act as if you are the best, I'm not speaking of arrogance or comparison with others. I'm speaking of recognizing and embodying your divine nature. For you are God's own image and likeness made manifest in flesh. Many of you come to these lectures believing that others are better than you, more talented than you, more deserving than you. But I tell you this, such beliefs are nothing but assumed limitations. And like all assumptions, they can be changed in a single moment of understanding. Consider this: when Scripture says, I am that I am, it's revealing the fundamental truth of your being. You are not becoming the best, you are the best. Your only task is to recognize and assume this truth until it becomes your living reality. Let me share with you what I mean by acting as if you are the best. It's not about competing with others or proving your superiority. It's about assuming the state of being the person you desire to be, knowing that no one can prevent you from expressing your highest conception of yourself. When you truly grasp that consciousness is the only reality, you understand that your concept of self determines everything you experience. If you assume others are better than you, the universe must conform to provide experiences that confirm this assumption. If you assume you are the best, the universe must, and I emphasize must, reorganize itself to reflect this assumption back to you. Here's a profound truth that few understand. Your present concept of self, the one that makes you feel less than others, is just as much a step as the one I'm asking you to adopt. You weren't born believing others were better than you. You learned to assume this through experience and accepted it as truth. Changing this assumption requires a complete revision of your self-concept. You must begin to live from the assumption that you are the best, not through comparison with others, but through the recognition of your divine nature. For when I say you are the best, I'm speaking of your true identity as pure consciousness. Let me share with you what happens in consciousness when you truly assume you are the best. First, all sense of competition falls away. When you know you are the best, you don't need to prove it to anyone. You don't need to diminish others to elevate yourself. You simply are, and that knowing is enough. Many of you make the mistake of trying to become the best through effort and struggle. But I tell you this, you cannot become what you already are. Your task is not to become the best, but to recognize and assume that you already are the best. This is what Scripture means when it says, be still and know that I am God. Consider this. Everything you're experiencing now, every limitation, every feeling of being less than others, is simply the harvested fruit of your past assumptions. The universe has been faithfully reflecting back to you what you have assumed about yourself. If you've assumed others are better, the universe has provided evidence to support this assumption. But here is the liberating truth. You can change this pattern in a single moment by assuming a new concept of self. When you assume you are the best, the universe has no choice but to rearrange itself to reflect this new assumption. This is law, and the law never fails. Let me tell you something about assuming you are the best. It has nothing to do with ego or pride. It's about recognizing your divine nature and allowing it to express through you. When you truly assume this state, you naturally want others to recognize and express their divine nature as well. This is why the command is to love your neighbor as yourself. When you truly recognize your own divine nature, you automatically get others. In others, you don't need to compete with them, because you understand that their success doesn't diminish your own greatness. Expressing your divine nature means living from the assumption that you are the best version of yourself right now, in this moment. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances change, but now. For in consciousness, where all creation takes place, there is no waiting, no becoming, there is only being. Let me share with you a principle that many find difficult to accept. Your current circumstances have no power to prevent you from assuming you are the best. Your bank account, your education, your background, your past failures, none of these can stop you from assuming a new concept of self. They are merely shadows of past assumptions. Many of you say, but Neville, how can I assume I'm the best when others are more qualified, more successful, more experienced? I tell you this, these comparisons exist only in your imagination. And if they exist in your imagination, they can be revised in your imagination. For imagination creates reality. Consider this. Every great individual who ever lived first assumed their greatness before it became visible to others. They didn't wait for circumstances to make them great. They assumed their greatness, and circumstances had to conform to their assumption. This is the law. When you truly assume you are the best, something remarkable happens in consciousness. All sense of strain, all need to prove yourself, all fear of competition falls away. You begin to move through life with a confidence that needs no external validation. Let me tell you something about this state of being the best. It's not about being better than others. It's about being better than your previous concept of yourself. When you assume this state, you naturally inspire others to rise to their best as well. For when one rises, all rise. Here's a profound truth about assuming you are the best. The universe cannot give you less than what you assume for yourself. If you assume mediocrity, the universe must provide experiences of mediocrity. If you assume excellence, the universe must provide experiences of excellence. Assuming excellence means occupying the state of being excellent in your imagination until it becomes your dominant feeling. Not just during meditation or visualization, but in every moment of your daily life. Your every thought, your every action, your every reaction must spring from this new assumption. Let me share with you what happens when you truly assume you are the best. Your walk changes, your talk changes, your posture changes, not through conscious effort, but as a natural expression of your new self-concept. The universe must then reshape itself to match this new expression. Many of you make the mistake of trying to act confident while maintaining an inner feeling of inadequacy. But I tell you this, the universe responds not to your outer actions, but to your inner feeling tone. You must feel your excellence in the very depths of your being. Consider this right now, in this very moment, there are infinite states of consciousness available to you. The state of being the best already exists, complete and perfect. Your task is not to create this state, but to occupy it through your assumption. When you assume you are the best, you stop seeking approval from others. You stop comparing yourself to others. You stop making excuses for why you can't succeed. These behaviors cannot exist in the consciousness of one who truly knows their own excellence. Let me tell you something crucial about maintaining this state. You will be tested. The world of Caesar will present you with evidence that seems to contradict your assumption. Old circumstances, old relationships, old patterns will persist for a time. This is law. But here's the secret. These circumstances have no power except the power you give them through your reaction. If you maintain your assumption of being the best despite contrary evidence, that very evidence must change to match your assumption. Handling contrary evidence is where most people falter in their assumption of being the best. When circumstances seem to deny your assumption, when others doubt you, when results don't immediately appear, this is when you must stand most firmly in your conviction. Let me share with you a principle that has proven itself countless times. The outer world will continue to reflect your old concept of self for a time. This is not a denial of your new assumption. It is an opportunity to strengthen it. Every circumstance that seems to deny your excellence is actually an opportunity to prove your assumption. Many of you abandon your assumption of being the best at the first sign of failure or criticism. But I tell you this, those very failures, those very criticisms, when met with unwavering assumption of your excellence, become the building blocks of your success. For what you persist in assuming must become your reality. Consider this. When you truly know you are the best, failure becomes impossible. You may face temporary setbacks, but in your consciousness, these are merely stepping stones to your inevitable success. This is how the great ones think. And this is how you must think if you would assume your greatness. The universe responds not to what others think of you, not to your past performance, not to your current circumstances, but to your persistent assumption. If you maintain the feeling of being the best despite all evidence to the contrary, the universe must, and I emphasize must, reorganize itself to match your assumption. Let me tell you something about persistence in your assumption. It's not about duration in time, but about the intensity of conviction. One moment of complete acceptance of your excellence is worth more than years of half-hearted affirmations. The universe responds not to time, but to the intensity of your assumption. Here's a profound truth about maintaining your assumption. You don't maintain it by fighting against current conditions, You maintain it by remaining so centered in your excellence that current conditions become irrelevant. Just as light doesn't fight darkness, it simply shines. You don't fight against limitations. You simply radiate excellence. Radiating excellence comes from a deep inner conviction that transcends all external circumstances. When you truly assume you are the best, this assumption radiates from you naturally, without effort, without strain, without trying to convince others. It becomes as natural as breathing. Let me share with you what I mean by radiating excellence. When you wake in the morning, before you even open your eyes, feel the naturalness of being the best. Not with excitement or enthusiasm, but with the quiet certainty of knowing who you really are. This feeling should be as natural as knowing your own name. Many of you try to radiate excellence through outer actions, through your clothes, your possessions, your achievements. But I tell you this, true excellence radiates from within. It's not something you do, it's something you are. The outer manifestations will follow naturally when your inner assumption is secure. Consider this, everything in your world right now is a reflection of your past radiation. If you've been radiating doubt, uncertainty, or feelings of inadequacy, the universe has faithfully reflected these back to you. The universe can only reflect what you radiate from within. When you truly radiate excellence, something remarkable happens. Others begin to recognize and respond to it. Not because you're trying to impress them, but because they can't help but respond to the conviction you carry within. This is why Scripture says, let your light so shine before men. Let me tell you something vital about radiating excellence. It must be consistent. You cannot radiate excellence for an hour and then return to radiating doubt and limitation. The universe responds to your predominant radiation, not to your occasional moments of feeling confident. Here's a profound truth about radiation. It affects everything in your world. When you truly radiate excellence, every person you meet, every circumstance you encounter must adjust itself to match your radiation. This is law, and the law never fails. Your radiation affects your world in ways that your logical mind could never conceive. When you consistently radiate the feeling of being the best, the entire universe must, and I emphasize must, rearrange itself to reflect this radiation back to you in the form of corresponding circumstances, events, and relationships. Let me share with you what happens when you maintain this radiation of excellent radiation. People who previously doubted you begin to see you differently. Opportunities that seemed close to you suddenly appear. Circumstances that appeared limiting begin to transform. Not because you're manipulating the outer world, but because your radiation is creating a new world. Many of you ask how long it will take for your world to reflect your new radiation. But I tell you this, time is not a factor in consciousness. The moment you achieve a complete conviction of being the best, the entire universe begins its reorganization. The time it takes for this to become visible depends solely on the intensity of your conviction. Consider this right now in this very moment. There are infinite versions of you existing simultaneously. There's a version where you're struggling, a version where you're succeeding, a version where you're the absolute best in your field. Your radiation determines which version you experience. When you truly understand this, you stop trying to compete with others. You realize that your only competition is with your previous concept of self. The only person you need to be better than is who you were yesterday. And this improvement comes not through strain or effort, but through assuming a higher concept of self. Let me tell you something about this radiation of excellence. It must become your natural state. Just as you don't think about breathing, you shouldn't have to think about being the best. It should be your default state, your natural way of being in the world. Here's a profound truth about maintaining this radiation. You don't maintain it by affirming it or by trying to convince others. You maintain it by living from it, by making it so much a part of your consciousness that you can't conceive of being any other way. Living from the state of being the best means making it your constant dwelling place in consciousness. Just as you naturally live in your physical home without constantly reminding yourself that it's your home, you must naturally live in the consciousness of being the best without constant mental effort. Let me share with you what happens when you truly live from this state. Your decisions change, your choices change, your responses to challenges change, not because you're trying to act differently, but because these new behaviors are the natural expression of your new state of consciousness. Many of you try to live from this state for a few hours or days, then slip back into your old patterns of thinking. But I tell you this, you must make a complete and permanent move into this new state. You must burn the bridges to your old concept of self. There can be no going back, no visiting your old limitations. Consider this, every great achievement in human history came from someone who dared to live from the state of being the best. They didn't wait until circumstances confirmed their greatness. They assumed their greatness first. And circumstances had no choice but to conform to their assumption. When you truly live from the state of being the best, criticism cannot touch you, not because you've become immune to it, but because you're living in a state where criticism is irrelevant. Just as a king doesn't defend his right to the throne, you don't defend your excellence, you simply live from it. Let me tell you something vital about living from this state. It requires no effort once you're truly established in it. Just as it requires no effort to be who you currently believe yourself to be, it requires no effort to be the best once you fully assume that state. Here's a profound truth about living from the state of being the best. It transforms not just your future, but your past as well. When you fully occupy the state, you begin to see how every past experience, even the seemingly negative ones, contributed to your excellence. Many of you believe that being the best means constantly striving, constantly pushing, constantly competing. But I tell you this, true excellence comes from a state of being, not from doing. When you occupy the state of being the best, your actions flow naturally from that state without strain or effort. Consider this right now. You're living from some concept of self. This concept might be that you're average, that others are better, that you need to struggle to succeed. And the universe has faithfully reflected this concept back to you. But I tell you this, you can shift to a new concept of self in a single moment of understanding. When you truly grasp that being the best is your natural state, your divine inheritance, something remarkable happens. All the energy you've been using to compete, to prove yourself, to overcome limitations becomes available for creative expression. You stop trying to become and simply allow yourself to be. Let me tell you something about this state of being the best. It's not about superiority over others. It's about expressing your highest potential, about being the best version of yourself. When you truly occupy this state, you naturally want others to recognize and express their excellence as well. Here's a profound truth about living as the best. It's the most natural thing in the world once you understand your true identity. You are God's own imagination made manifest. How could you be anything less than the best? Any limitation you experience is simply a limitation you've accepted in imagination. Accepting your true identity as the best version of yourself requires a complete revision of everything you've believed about who you are. You must understand that your current concept of self, with all its limitations and doubts, is just as much an assumed state as the one I'm asking you to adopt. Let me share with you what happens when you fully accept your true identity. First, all sense of unworthiness falls away. You stop questioning whether you deserve success, whether you're good enough, whether you can achieve your goals. You know with absolute certainty that excellence is your natural state. Many of you have lived so long with a limited concept of self that being the best seems like an impossible dream. But I tell you this, that very feeling of impossibility is itself an assumption. And like all assumptions, it can be changed in a single moment through the power of your wonderful human imagination. Consider this. Every limitation you now accept, every feeling of being less than the best, is nothing more than a habit of consciousness. And habits, no matter how long established, can be changed through persistent assumption of a new state. This is law, and the law never fails. When you truly accept your identity as the best, your entire world must reshape itself to match this new self-concept. People who once intimidated you will find themselves responding to your new radiation. Circumstances that seem beyond your reach will naturally align themselves with your new assumption. Let me tell you something vital about maintaining this new identity. You don't maintain it through willpower or positive thinking. You maintain it through understanding. Once you truly understand that being the best is your natural state, you can no more doubt it than you can doubt your own existence. Here's a profound truth about your true identity. It's not something you need to create or achieve. It already exists, complete and perfect, waiting for you to step into it through assumption. Your only task is to accept it, to occupy it, to live from it. Many of you fluctuate between being excellent and feeling inadequate, depending on external circumstances. But I tell you this, such fluctuation is impossible when you truly occupy the state of being the best. Just as a king doesn't stop being a king during challenges, you don't stop being excellent when facing obstacles. Consider this, every experience you encounter is simply an opportunity to express your excellence. Even apparent failures become opportunities to demonstrate your unshakable conviction in your own greatness. For when you live from the state of being the best, failure becomes impossible. When you truly live from this identity, something remarkable happens to your relationship with time. You stop waiting to become excellent in the future and start expressing excellence now. For in consciousness, where all creation takes place, there is no waiting, no becoming, there is only being. Let me tell you something crucial about maintaining this state. The world will test your conviction. It must, for this is law. Old circumstances, old relationships, old patterns of failure will persist for a time. But these are not obstacles to your assumption. They are opportunities to strengthen it. Here's a profound truth about living from your true identity. It requires no effort once you're established in it. Just as you don't need effort to be who you currently believe yourself to be. You need no effort to be the best once you've fully accepted this as your true identity. Uncovering your natural excellence is like removing layers of dust from a perfect mirror. The brilliance was always there. It was merely covered by accumulated beliefs in limitation, doubt, and unworthiness. As you remove these false beliefs, your natural excellence shines forth with ever-increasing clarity. Let me share with you what happens when these layers of limitation begin to fall away. First, you stop seeking validation from others. You stop needing external confirmation of your excellence. You know who you are with such certainty that no external opinion can shake your conviction. Many of you have accumulated so many layers of limiting beliefs that your natural excellence seems like a distant dream. But I tell you this, these limitations are no more permanent than dust on a mirror. They can be wiped away in an instant through the power of your assumption. Consider this, every limiting belief you now hold, every doubt about your excellence, every fear of inadequacy was learned. And what can be learned can be unlearned. Your task is not to create excellence, but to remove the barriers to its expression. When you truly begin this process of uncovering your excellence, something remarkable happens to your entire worldview. You start to see that every circumstance, every relationship, every experience has been serving to reveal your true nature. Even your apparent failures have been leading you to this recognition. Let me tell you something crucial about this uncovering process. It happens not through effort, but through understanding. The moment you truly understand that excellence is your natural state, the layers of limitation begin to fall away of the occasion. Here's a profound truth about uncovering your excellence. The process is instantaneous in consciousness, but may appear gradual in manifestation. The moment you fully accept your true identity, the entire universe begins its reorganization to reflect this truth. The time it takes for this to become visible depends solely on the completeness of your acceptance. The process of accepting your natural excellence requires a complete revision of your self-concept. You must be willing to release every belief, every idea, every concept that contradicts your true identity as the best. This is not something you do gradually. It must be absolute and complete. Let me share with you what happens when this acceptance becomes total. First, all internal conflict ceases. The battle between who you think you should be and who you think you are ends completely. There is only the quiet certainty of knowing your true identity as the best. Many of you try to accept your excellence while still holding on to doubts and limitations. But I tell you this, such partial acceptance is no acceptance at all. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot live from the state of being the best while maintaining a backup identity of limitation. Consider this. Your current concept of self, with all its limitations and doubts, is just as much an assumed state as the one I'm asking you to adopt. The only difference is that you've practiced your current concept longer. But time is no factor in consciousness. A new state, fully accepted, becomes just as natural as any long-held belief. When you truly accept your excellence without reservation, something remarkable happens to your entire experience of life. What once seemed like obstacles become opportunities. What once seemed like competition becomes irrelevant. What once seemed like limitations become launching pads for greater expression. Let me tell you something vital about this acceptance. It must be unconditional. You can accept your excellence only when circumstances support it. You must maintain this acceptance regardless of external conditions, knowing that conditions must conform to your consciousness, not the other way around. Here's a profound truth about complete acceptance. It transforms not just your future, but your past as well. When you fully accept your excellence, you begin to see how every past experience, even the seemingly negative ones, was perfectly designed to lead you to this recognition.